Hey y'all, welcome back to another quick review. Today I wanted to take a moment to talk about No Players Online, which came out on November 6th, 2025. This video will include minor spoilers, basically just some setups and explanations of events with no context. This is a game that is best to go in as blind as possible, and I want to honor that as best as I can, although it's impossible to keep this review entirely spoiler-free. With that being said, I think you can watch this review before playing the game and still have the intended experience. Otherwise, before we talk about the new game, I want to talk a little bit about the original that came out exactly 6 years before. While No Players Online 2025 expands the original in every way, it also loses something that made the original so special. The original No Players Online is, in my opinion, a masterclass in indie horror. Sure, it may only be 7 minutes long, but it takes a really interesting concept and runs with it. Games can't last forever, especially multiplayer games. Without constant new updates, eventually player counts will dwindle and maps designed with the intent to be filled with players will be left empty. I myself have explored old Half-Life deathmatch maps and found how eerie these places can be without players. Everything looks fine, but something just feels off about these places. That is the exact definition of liminal spaces. Places that look normal, but just don't feel right without people in them. Walking down an empty street or abandoned building instills a sense of fear due to them being empty when normally they shouldn't be. No Players Online is built entirely on this concept. You explore an old Capture the Flag game, where there are quite literally 0 players online. You join and walk through a space that should be full of players, and yet there are none. The game has no music, only the loud sound of your footsteps. After grabbing the first flag, you encounter a record player, which is playing creepy old music. Then, after delivering the first flag, you start seeing things in the corner of your eye. A tall, slender, black figure. You see it more and more as you go back with the second flag until, finally, it strikes. While the game isn't much more than this and a few plot details that I won't spoil, it perfectly creates an atmosphere, feeling like you're not alone, and then figuring out that you actually are not. To me, the game didn't need much more than this to get the job done. It's a short little game that capitalizes on a common fear. What else would it need? Well, No Players Online 2025 answers that with one word: scope. No Players Online 2025 is essentially the same game as the original, but it just has more stuff to do. More lore, more dialogue, more characters, more games to play, more everything. The thing is, I don't actually think that this entirely works in the game's benefit. No Players Online retains almost everything from the original. It has a similar presentation, the exact same story, and even the same ending choices. However, because of all the added elements, it loses the best part of the original game: the horror. Horror in liminal spaces is built off the feeling of something being just not quite right. And the original No Players Online capitalizes on this fully. Besides the CRT filter over the screen, nothing about the game actually feels out of the ordinary. That's why the game works as well as it does, because it completely immerses you. It makes you feel like everything is okay, and yet you still feel like something's off anyways. It even launches directly into a server browser from your desktop, which adds to the feeling like you're playing some random old FPS game. No Players Online 2025 loses this by making the entire game take place on a quote, abandoned PC, according to the Steam page. By framing the game as taking place on a computer other than yours, it removes that immersive feeling from the game, and thus the entire concept just doesn't work as well in my opinion. It doesn't feel like you're just playing some long dead Capture the Flag game anymore. It feels like you're playing a spooky haunted game on the evil abandoned Soul computer. Honestly though, I think the devs may have actually known that. This game is honestly just not a horror game. It's more like a love story with horror elements. There's some honestly messed up things that happen in this game, but a lot of the time it's framed more as being deeply sad than actually scary. And on the gameplay side of things, there's maybe like 2 or 3 moments that were actually slightly tense rather than just a walking sim. There's a recreation of the original game, there's a part where you swim in a pool with a big snake monster, and there's a part where you're walking through a creepy red forest. I wish that this game would have lived up to the original's horror roots. So, how is all this added gameplay, and what does it add to what this game is trying to do? Well, the main new element of this game is the recreation of a mid-90s desktop and internet browsing experience. This is easily one of the best parts of the game. I have a real soft spot for this kind of thing because the old web is really such a different beast than what we got today. Like, it was a lot more human back then, where people could just make a blog about their day-to-day or post on forums that could be about literally anything. No Players Online actually does a fantastic job at recreating the feeling of being on the old internet with an entire game development forum to explore and a few AOL chats as well. I think the forum specifically does a really great job at capturing the spirit of the old web by including all the different stereotypes. Emo furries, bots, and chronically online self-obsessed nerds are all here. And it's just so fun to read through and reminds me of some of my own time exploring old web forums. All of this is just largely set dressing for this game's main mechanic, the ability to download and combine games. There's 5 different games that you can find and combine throughout the game. A fishing game, a dating sim, a dungeon crawler, some stupid clock game, and a painting game. The dating sim is especially impressive because it's actually decently long despite being entirely optional. Some of these games can be combined together to progress the story, but you can also combine each of them with Minesweeper, which you start the game with, to get an entirely new game, including a ripoff of the Impossible game that made me want to rip my hair out. There actually is seemingly a decent amount of side content here, with all the different game combinations, high scores to beat, and even apparently a date you can go on. The ending sequence of the game is also fantastic, because not only does it combine literally every gameplay element up to that point, but it also does it in a new, unique way that fits with the tension of the story's climax. Besides the fantastic recreation of an old desktop, the gameplay is pretty minimal. There's some light puzzle solving here and there, but most of the traditional gameplay on the Golden Path is just a walking simulator. One of my main problems with this game and other games like this, such as Kanito Pet, is that I wish there was just more of an actual game here. Like, sure, there's a lot of cool side stuff to do, but most of that is just there to add to the immersion of being on an old 90s computer. I wish there were actual cool gameplay mechanics that were fun and interesting, but honestly, besides the fantastic ending where it does just that, it's just a bunch of walking around. Because of that, I can't really see much reason to replay this game whatsoever. The lack of diverse gameplay really makes a lot of sense though, because it's pretty clear that the expanded story was the main reason as to why this was turned into a full game. As I said before, the story and even the ending choices are pretty much exactly the same here as in the original, just heavily expanded. And honestly, this is one addition with the new version that I honestly don't see any negatives to. As much as I love the desktop, I do think it takes away from the horror a bit. It maybe ruins the pacing a little, but oh well. The expanded story, however, makes the story so much more tragic and engaging. The story is essentially about you, the player as the game calls you, finding an old desktop that belonged to one John Mullard. John is essentially the Kanye West of game developers in this universe. Not only did he seemingly create 3D graphics, but also the entire FPS genre. By reading his personal blog, you can find out about his life as well, who is a professional artist. His last blog entry is about a terrible tragedy and how he is pausing all game development for the foreseeable future. The story hinges entirely off of this tragedy and how this husband and wife deal with it. What's so fantastic about this story is just how it's revealed. Because of the way that the game is set up, it's really entirely up to the player to figure out what's going on, and I think that this game does a really fantastic job at setting up little hints all throughout. What I love so much about this game was that it answered almost every single question I had, while also keeping me in the dark for most of the game. Lots of these kind of indie horror games do a really bad job at explaining what the hell is actually going on because they're trying to create theory bait, which helps spread the word about the game. This game, however, was able to create a satisfying story that wraps around itself by the end, all while still leaving in a few superfluous elements which could then be discussed and thought upon further. I think that this story is just honestly fantastic and really well written with some really interesting characters and one hell of a climax. I do think that there are just a few problems about the story, however. First off, the role of the player isn't really explained at all, despite how important they are to impacting the story. Like, it's never explained where this abandoned computer is found, why they are looking through it, what connection they have to the couple, or anything. I do think it makes the ending ring a bit more hollow than it should, especially with the ending choices. Like, who is this guy and why is he doing all this? I also think that there are just a few things about John that don't make sense. First off, I wish that his role in the story would have been explained just a bit more. Where is he during the events of the game, and why did he abandon his computer that has all this sensitive information on it? Also, the game takes place in 1994, yet John released his 3D Capture the Flag FPS game in 1973. Like, were games even invented yet, let alone 3D FPS multiplayer games? And also, like, he started his personal blog in 1961, but from what I understand, the internet wasn't even invented until 1983. How did he have a blog, and who the hell would have been reading it? The game does kind of try to explain this away, however. Slight spoiler, just skip ahead like 10 seconds. But the game heavily implies that John does not actually develop these games himself. Despite that, however, it still doesn't make sense how he had a blog so early. And like, these games would have been groundbreaking at the time, and he probably would have been famous worldwide. I think the dates kind of needed to be adjusted a bit, because what is presented in the game does kind of break the immersion a little bit. Overall, No Players Online is a really fantastic experience with some flaws. I think that the expanded scope loses a lot of the best parts of the original experience, like the fantastic immersion and atmosphere that the game built, as well as the great horrific payoff towards the end. The recreation of the 90s desktop is fantastic, however, and I think that the combining games mechanic leads to a lot of cool side content. The game is a bit of a walking simulator at times, which severely hurts replayability, but the story is more than worth it for at least one playthrough. Honestly, I think the biggest hurdle for people is just going to be the length. This game took me a little over 2 hours to beat, and I would say for a 100% playthrough, it would take maybe 5 hours at most. For $15, that might not be worth it to everyone. But for me, however, I would say that I heavily enjoyed my time with this game. Sure, I may think that it is a flawed game in many ways, but it is also just so damn good in so many aspects. The presentation of this game is just unbeatable. I love the simulated experience of exploring the old web, even if it is only a small portion. The story, and especially the climax as well, are just so good that I would say it's worth the price alone. While this may be a flawed horror game, it is a pretty great experience about grief and old computers. I recommend No Players Online and would give it a 7 out of 10. Well guys, that's my review of No Players Online. I'd appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe and all that. But yeah, I just want to take a few minutes to just chat about some things. So my first YouTube video actually did a bit better than I thought. I got a comment, subscriber, and I got 40 views. Although, unfortunately, I think I just got lucky. I don't really think this video will do as well, just because like this game is a little less popular than the Outer Worlds 2. Another thing about this video is just, I'm worried if I'm a bit too negative here. Like, this is a game made by, from what I understand, 3 people. And it's like, my main critique with the game is just that it's not scary. So like, if I was the creator watching this, I'd be like, well, I didn't want it to be scary. And that's a fair point. But I just kind of tried to look at it as like, I made this based on my opinion and what I wanted. But yeah, you know, I'm still new to reviewing things like in this format, so I'm gonna have to see kind of what works, what doesn't. But honestly, like, yeah, you know, I hope the creator like doesn't see this somehow. I did see on his Twitter he was like looking at Steam reviews, and I don't know, I don't think he will, but that would be embarrassing and I would feel bad. Like if someone said like, oh, you don't talk naturally in your videos, like, yeah, that's not what I'm going for. Yeah, I also uploaded a video on TikTok and it got 1,100 views, 90 likes, and like 20 followers. So, you know, I like uploading on TikTok. It's a lot easier. I uploaded another one right before this video, but I don't know, I don't like it as much as this because you can't really go as in depth. So I'm gonna keep uploading on my TikTok. It should be linked somewhere, but it's just like good username 011, I think, on TikTok. So yeah. Thanks for watching my video here. I think my next video will be Black Ops 7, and then Destiny 2 Renegades, and then I think some end of the year list video, at least just like ranking every game I played this year. And then yeah, that might be it for this year. But I really appreciate if you watch this far, and like I said, like please at least leave a comment. It would make my day. Well yeah, thank you. Bye.